Hello YouTube, I've built the Panzerkampfwagen III, just kidding, the Panzerkampfwagen III Ausführung E. Hopefully that's close. Obviously I don't speak German and my accent's terrible, so hopefully you like my model building instead. I begin with slightly altering some of the features that will make this specific to the version E model. Dragon sells many variations of the Panzer III with the same sprue pieces, and so some of the parts along the way are going to require small modifications. I started the tracks at the beginning of the build so that I could cut a few rows out each day that I was working on the model. That way I didn't become very bored having to cut them all out at once. The idler wheels inconveniently had ejection pin marks prominently on the front side that must be filled with putty. I test fit a few track links to make sure that the teeth lined up properly on the drive sprocket. The suspension was lightly glued in place and then adjusted to be level when I drive fit the road wheels. Overall, I was very impressed by the amount of tiny parts and lots of great detail all over this model. Many pieces to assemble. Highly recommend a good pair of tweezers. I glued the tracks with Tamiya extra thin cement, but before they had a chance to completely dry, I would press them over the wheels so that I could achieve a small sag in between the rollers. I assembled small sections of the track and combined them into 3 larger sections for each side of the model that I would attach later on in the build. All of the wheels are just dry fit into place, and I'll glue them on later. Sometimes Tamiya paint needs to be stirred to break up the clumps of pigment, especially on the metallic colors. I weathered the 3 track pieces for each side with a brown wash and then pigments, and I wiped off the tops of the tracks that would come in contact with the ground or the wheels just using a dry cotton swab. The machine gun barrels were flat with no depth on the opening, so I drilled them out with my micro drill bits. If you're wondering why I'm doing pre-shading after I've already painted and chipped the model, it's because I changed my mind in the middle of it from my original plan. I decided I didn't like how it looked and I didn't want all the chipping, and so this is a redo. I added a small bit of medium blue to the German gray and sprayed some highlights on some panels and hinges. Desert yellow is the base coat for my wood, and I'll come back later with brown oils and make it actually look good. Right now it's way too yellowy to look realistic. Before the wheels are fully glued and set in place, I'll check the alignment so that the tracks will run right down the middle of the grooves. To improve on the wood texture, I brush on oil paint. In this case it was burnt umber, but any dark or medium color brown will do. And then I just dry brush it, and the dry brushing will remove some of the oil paint and let the lighter color show through and somewhat simulate the wood grain. I'll use white oil paints to add highlights to various parts of the tank, and it can then just be blended in with a dry paintbrush. Excess pigment that wasn't covered with the pigment fixer can still be rubbed off with a damp cotton swab and water. This is one of the first figures I've painted, and I used a Tamiya Wehrmacht figure set for the tank commander. Painted the face with oils and the body with acrylics. Here I've already clear coated the figure with Future, and I'm adding highlights to the raised edges of the clothing with a very dark gray oil mix. The decals for this figure are so tiny that they barely stuck without the use of microsol. My last bit of work on this was the binocular strap, which was made out of thin strip of Tamiya tape that I painted brown, crinkled it up, and then glued it around the commander's neck.